My brother stole my identity, my inheritance, and my fiancé. Now he's homeless and wants my help. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, and I apologize in advance for the length of this post. I just need to get this all out and maybe get some outside perspectives because my head is absolutely spinning. This isn't a simple situation, and it goes back years, so bear with me. I, 32 male, had a younger brother, Mark, 30 male. I say had because honestly, I don't know what we are anymore. Our relationship, or lack thereof, is the crux of this whole mess. Growing up, our dynamic was complicated. Mark was always the charming one, the troublemaker with a heart of gold, according to our parents. I was the responsible one, the quiet one, the one who followed the rules. This led to a lot of unspoken resentment on my part, as Mark seemed to get away with everything while I was held to a higher standard. If I messed up, it was a lecture and a grounding. If Mark messed up, it was a boys will be boys shrug and a laugh. It started small, Mark borrowing my toys without asking, then breaking them. Then it escalated to borrowing my homework, getting caught, and me taking the blame to avoid his wrath. Our parents, bless their hearts, just never saw it. Or maybe they did and chose to ignore it, hoping it would all just sort itself out. When we were in our early 20s, things really started to spiral. I was in college, working part-time, trying to build a future. Mark was not. He bounced from job to job, racking up debt, and constantly asking our parents for money. They, of course, always gave it to him. I, on the other hand, was expected to be self-sufficient. I didn't mind, really. I was proud of my independence. But it just highlighted the difference in how we were treated. The first major betrayal came when I was 24. I had just landed my dream job, and I was on cloud 9. I had a decent amount of savings, enough for a down payment on a small apartment. I was meticulously planning my finances, excited for this next chapter. One day, I got a call from my bank. There was some suspicious activity on my account. Multiple large withdrawals, all from ATMs in a city 3 states away. My heart sank. I knew, instantly, who it was. I confronted Mark, who, after initially denying it, eventually broke down and admitted he had taken my debit card, memorized my PIN, he must have watched me at some point, and had been using my money to fund a business venture that, predictably, never materialized. He had drained nearly all of my savings. I was devastated, not just by the financial loss, but by the utter betrayal. This wasn't just borrowing anymore. This was theft. Our parents, when I told them, were surprisingly subdued. They made Mark apologize, which felt hollow, and promised he would pay me back. He never did. They offered to help me, but I refused. I wanted nothing from them or him at that point. I was so angry, so hurt. I worked even harder, saved up again, and eventually got my apartment. But the trust was gone. Completely shattered. Fast forward a few years. I had met Sarah, the most amazing woman I had ever known. She was kind, intelligent, beautiful, and she understood me in a way no one else ever had. We fell deeply in love, and after 2 wonderful years together, I proposed. She said yes. We were over the moon. Our families were happy for us, or so I thought. Mark, surprisingly, seemed genuinely happy for me. He had even managed to hold down a job for a few months and was seemingly turning his life around. I, foolishly, started to let my guard down, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he had finally matured. We started planning the wedding, and Sarah, being the meticulous planner she is, had everything organized down to the smallest detail. This is where my inheritance comes into play. My grandmother, who I adored, had passed away a year before, leaving me a substantial sum of money. She knew my struggles with Mark and had specifically stated in her will that the money was for me, and me alone. It was to be held in a trust until I was 30, but I had access to a portion of it for a down payment on a house once I was engaged. I had just turned 30, and the full amount had become accessible to me. Sarah and I were planning to use a significant chunk of it for a down payment on our dream house, and the rest for our future, maybe a family. We were so excited. About 6 months before the wedding, things started to feel off. Sarah became distant, withdrawn. She was constantly on her phone, whispering, going on errands that lasted for hours. When I asked her about it, she would get defensive, saying I was being paranoid, that she was just stressed with wedding planning. I wanted to believe her, but my gut was screaming. Then, I started getting strange calls. Calls from collection agencies for debts I didn't owe. Calls from credit card companies about applications I hadn't made. My blood ran cold. This felt eerily familiar that I did some digging, discreetly at first, then more aggressively. I checked my credit report, and there it was. Multiple new accounts, loans, credit cards, all opened in my name. And the addresses associated with them were not mine. They were addresses I recognized, places Mark had lived for brief periods. My brother. Again. My heart ached, but I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me, what absolutely broke me, was what else I found. Among the recent credit card applications, there was a shared contact number. Sarah's phone number that I confronted Sarah first. I laid out all the evidence, the credit report, the phone numbers. She broke down, sobbing, admitting everything. She had been having an affair with Mark. Not just a fling, but a full-blown relationship, planning a future with him. And she had been helping him steal my identity, using my information to open accounts, funneling money to him. She confessed that Mark had painted a picture of me as a controlling, boring, unadventurous man, and that he was the exciting, passionate one. He had apparently convinced her that I was holding her back, that he could give her a better life, a life of adventure and spontaneity. He had promised her the world, using my money to do it that I couldn't breathe. The woman I loved, the woman I was going to marry, had not only betrayed me with my brother, but had actively participated in defrauding me. It was a double-gut punch that left me reeling. The pain was physical. I felt like I had been ripped open, hollowed out. I asked her to leave, and she did, taking her things and disappearing from my life. Next, I confronted Mark. He didn't deny it this time. He just smirked, a look of triumph on his face. He said I was too naive, too trusting. He said he deserved my inheritance more than I did, that I never appreciated what I had. He said Sarah was always meant to be his, that I was just a placeholder. He even gloated about how easy it was to manipulate her, to turn her against me. He laughed, a cruel, mocking sound, when I told him I was pressing charges. He genuinely thought he was untouchable, that our parents would protect him, that I was too weak to follow through, that he was wrong, that I went to the police. I provided them with all the evidence I had meticulously gathered. It was a mountain of it: bank statements, credit reports, recorded phone calls with collection agencies, emails, texts. The police took it very seriously. Identity theft is no joke, and the scale of what Mark had done was significant. The financial damage was immense, hundreds of thousands of dollars. The emotional damage, however, was incalculable. My parents, when they found out, were initially in denial. They couldn't believe their charming son could do such a thing. But when faced with the undeniable evidence and the threat of Mark facing serious jail time, they finally saw him for who he truly was. They were devastated, heartbroken. They tried to intervene, to get me to drop the charges, to work it out as a family. I refused. I told them this wasn't about family anymore. This was about justice, about protecting myself from a predator who happened to be my brother. I told them that if they continued to enable him, they were just as complicit in his actions. It was a brutal conversation, one that left deep wounds. Mark was arrested. The legal process was long and arduous. It was a constant reminder of the betrayal, the pain. Sarah was also questioned, but because she cooperated and provided further evidence against Mark, and because her involvement was secondary to his, she was granted a plea deal and received a much lighter sentence, probation, and restitution. Mark, on the other hand, faced the full force of the law. He was found guilty of multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, and grand larceny. He received a lengthy prison sentence. He was also ordered to pay restitution, which, given his financial history, was a pipe dream. The aftermath was a blur of therapy, rebuilding my credit, and trying to piece my life back together. My relationship with my parents was strained, to say the least. They visited Mark in prison, tried to support him, still holding on to the hope that he would change. I couldn't bring myself to see him. I wanted nothing to do with him, or the wreckage he had left in his wake. I changed my phone number, moved to a new city, and started fresh. I went completely no contact with Mark, and limited contact with my parents to infrequent, superficial conversations. I focused on my career, on healing, on finding joy in simple things again. It's been 5 years since all of that happened. 5 years of peace, of rebuilding, of finding a new sense of self. I've worked incredibly hard to get to where I am today. I have a new job, a beautiful apartment, and a good group of friends. I've even started dating again, cautiously, but with an open heart. I'm not the same person I was, of course. I'm more guarded, more discerning, but I'm also stronger, more resilient. Then, about a month ago, a letter arrived. It was from our parents. They wanted to meet. I was hesitant, but after talking to my therapist, I decided to go. I needed to know what they wanted, and perhaps get some closure. When I arrived, they looked different. Older, wearier. They sat me down, and the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken words. My mother started, her voice trembling. Mark had been released from prison early, on parole. He had served a significant portion of his sentence, but due to good behavior and overcrowding, he was out. My stomach dropped. I had known this day would come eventually, but I hadn't prepared myself for it. Then came the bombshell. Mark was homeless. He had nowhere to go. No job prospects, no money, no friends. He had burned every bridge, including with our parents. Apparently, during his time in prison, he had continued his manipulative ways, even towards them. He had borrowed money, made empty promises, and blamed everyone but himself for his situation. They had finally cut him off completely, financially and emotionally. They told him he was on his own. Now, he was reaching out to them, begging for help. And they, in turn, were reaching out to me. They told me that Mark was truly remorseful this time, that he had changed. They said he needed a place to stay, a fresh start, and that I was the only one who could give it to him. They pleaded with me, said it was my brotherly duty to help him. They even hinted that it would heal the family. I just stared at them, completely dumbfounded. My brother, who stole my identity, drained my bank accounts, tried to steal my inheritance, and then stole my fiancée, was now homeless and expecting me to pick up the pieces? After everything he put me through, after the years of therapy, the financial ruin, the emotional trauma, they expected me to open my home, my life, to him. I told them, calmly, that it was absolutely out of the question. I reminded them of everything Mark had done, the unforgivable betrayals. I told them that I had spent the last 5 years rebuilding my life, and I was not going to risk it all for someone who had consistently shown himself to be a manipulative, destructive force. I said that Mark's current situation was a direct consequence of his own actions, and he needed to face those consequences. My mother started to cry, saying I was being cruel, that I was abandoning my own flesh and blood. My father tried to reason with me, saying blood is thicker than water. I looked at them both, and for the first time, I felt a strange sense of detachment. I didn't feel angry anymore, just exhausted. That I told them, clearly and firmly, that I wished Mark well, and that I hope he would truly turn his life around, but that my help would not be forthcoming. My life, my peace, my safety was not a bargaining chip. I told them I was leaving, and that I needed space to process this. I then got up and left. Now, I'm sitting here, writing this, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. Guilt, anger, confusion, and a strange sense of relief. Am I a bad person for refusing to help my brother? Is blood thicker than water? And am I abandoning my family? Or am I finally putting myself first, protecting the life I've worked so hard to build? Part of me feels a pang of sadness for the lost potential, for the brother I wished I had. But another, larger part of me, feels a fierce protectiveness over my peace and my future. I know what Mark is capable of, and I know that letting him back into my life would be a catastrophic mistake. That I just need to know if I'm justified in feeling this way. Am I wrong to prioritize my well-being over family duty when that family member has caused so much destruction? I feel like I'm finally free of the constant anxiety and fear he brought into my life, and I don't want to go back. Any advice, any perspective would be greatly appreciated. I feel so alone in this, and I just need to know if I'm making the right choice.